Hello, hello. Welcome to our next session. We're so happy to have you here. Hope you all enjoyed a little coffee meetup out there. My name is Alec. I am the executive director of the Climate Film Festival, one of its co-founders, and this is our inaugural Narrative Change Summit. We are so thrilled to have this double feature back-to-back here around climate solutions on screen broadly. We've got it called Better by Design Solutions on Screen, which I think really captures a lot of both of the different sessions. So the first one that I'll be introducing is Young Climate Stories. And then immediately after, we're not going to clear the theater, we're going to hang out. Will be Just Don't Say Climate, Reframing Solutions in Today's Media Landscape. And the reason that we wanted to have this panel was really to talk about how design and innovative solutions can break through some of the barriers, some of the partisanship around climate, and also around the world, right, in terms of how we think about and communicate and get people excited and working on climate solutions. To begin with, it is my pleasure to thank the two session sponsors. The first is Snowcap. John's over there. John has been an incredible supporter of the summit. When bright minds combine the promise of deep science, the power of impassioned storytelling, and the speed of venture, they break political deadlock and change the world out from under us. Snowcap is a revolutionary new venture fund focused on turning scientists into founders, changing how industry works from the bottom up, and having a little fun while doing it, which if you're attending Climate Karaoke on Thursday, you know about. Snowcap believes in the marriage of media and innovation to plot a better path for our planet and has been a proud partner of CFF for 3 years and counting. If you are a founder leveraging science to upgrade global industry, they want to hear from you. Reach out at snowcap.vc, snocap.vc. And our second sponsor is Tidal Vision. Tidal Vision is unlocking scalable solutions with some of the most pressing chemistry, pollution, and yes, climate challenges facing some of the most critical industries, water and agriculture. Their solutions enable farmers to grow more crops while applying 40 plus less pounds of fertilizer per acre and 50 plus less pesticides, 50% plus. Their water treatment technology redefines the economics of treating polluted water. Tidal Vision's technology is scalable because it outcompetes the status quo so significantly on performance and economics, which is why the startup has been growing 100% year over year and has achieved over $100 million in revenue run rate with 300 employees, 800 customers, and all with industry-leading margins. So keep an eye out for this climate tech, circular, green, blue economy, and industrial biotech company as they're planning to IPO in a few years and really bring these climate solutions mainstream. And now I would like to introduce our first session, Young Climate Stories. With the World Around Young Climate Prize, I'd like to also share a little bit about the World Around as this incredible organization pulling this together, and then our moderator. And then I will get off the mic and hand it to the panelists who you would like to hear from. The the World Around is a global platform for architecture and design that amplifies the visionary voices shaping our cities, our planet, and our future. Founded by curator and critic Beatrice Galilei, the organization is a nonprofit powered by an international, interdisciplinary team of architects, writers, filmmakers, urbanists, and researchers. Through public programs, international collaborations, original video and editorial content, and a growing digital archive, the World Around spotlights the most urgent and inspiring ideas in contemporary architecture and design. Its flagship biennial initiative, the Young Climate Prize, who we'll be hearing from here, identifies and mentors 25 innovators under 25 from around the world whose bold projects confront the climate crisis through design. Over 3 months, finalists join on a design academy of workshops, lectures, and one-on-one mentorship with global leaders. More than just a prize, this initiative cultivates a powerful international community of changemakers whose lived experience and creative vision drive tangible, scalable climate solutions around the world. And our moderator today will be Dan Howarth, a British design writer, editor, and creative consultant based in New York City, an editorial consultant for creative companies with past clients including Condé Nast, Kelly Wearstler, Colin King, and Stellar Works. His previous roles have included editorial director at Mini Business Innovation, ADO, and UrbanX, and editorial director for branding based Design, and Hush. He's a regular writer and contributor and has contributed to many publications and books, and is also director of communications at The World Around and an instrumental part of the Young Climate Prize team. Dan, I would love to welcome you up to introduce the rest of the panel.
All right, thank you guys all so much for being here, and thank you so much to the Climate Film Festival for having us. This is super exciting. It's great to see so many people here. It's amazing. The energy in that lobby was really electric. As introduced, my name's Dan Howarth, and I've been lucky to have been involved in the Young Climate Prize since its inception in 2022. And it's been a really incredible journey to see and meet all of these amazing young people whose projects have evolved and developed as part of the prize and outside of it, beyond it, with their mentors. And it's incredibly inspiring, and so I feel very lucky to have played a small part in it. We wrapped up our second cycle earlier this year in May when our winners presented at MoMA during the World Around's annual summit. And applications for cycle 3 will open next spring. So if you or anyone you know is under 25 and have an amazing climate-focused project or an initiative that you're really passionate about, please do apply. It's really an amazing opportunity. We're also due to launch our Young Climate Stories initiative this fall. This is a series of short documentary-style films that really go into a lot more depth to explore the projects of our Young Climate Prize cohort members. We go to where they live to explore what they're doing in their communities, to work hard and take climate action. It's very inspiring, and the films are really beautifully made, so we're very excited about that. I think we have a very short video to play that gives a little teaser about Young Climate Stories.
Did I start? Okay.
You have one of those things too.
Nature doesn't have borders. So we need to work together if we want to live in a better world.
If we're all conscious of the fact that we each have a way we can impact our community in the smallest of ways, I believe we can make a difference.
Woo! Awesome. I also do want to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to the Young Climate Prize design partner, Miller Knoll. They've been really instrumental in helping us grow and develop the prize, and we're extremely grateful, so thank you so much. With us today, we're really, really lucky to have 3 amazing speakers with us. Each of them was a member of the first Young Climate Prize cohort. Each of them are from a very different part of the world and has a very different perspective on climate and the climate crisis and climate action. We have Alfonse, Pamela, and Joseph with us. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about why they first got involved in the climate movement to begin with. So, Alfonse, let's start with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan, and of course to being Anna and the CFF people for getting us here. It's lovely. My name is Alfonse Chiu. I'm a Taiwanese Singaporean designer, writer, and curator. And during my time with the Young Climate Prize, I was mentored by Paola Antonelli, senior curator of architecture and design at MoMA. And the reason why I got involved is because, we live on Earth, an Earth that's kind of like breaking apart, and to think through the solutions through exhibition making and social design, is one of the instrumental ways in which we change the narrative, and to change the narrative entails creating hope. And I think that's also why we're here, and hope not, it's going too long. Pass it to Pam.
Yeah, for me, the journey started when I was 17, so wow, 10 years ago. That's crazy. It started with the ocean plastic pollution crisis, and I created awareness campaigns in Mexico, and the more I learned about the problem, the more I saw that the real culprit was the fossil fuel industry and not us, the consumers. Like, yes, we can play a part in the solution, but we weren't the source of it. So that's where I got involved with a young climate justice movement here in New York and internationally. And from there, I got deep into words and the language around climate action.
And Joseph. Thanks, Dan. My name is Joseph Nguthiru. I come from Nairobi, Kenya. It's in Africa. I run 2 startups. One of them is called HyaPak. We manufacture biodegradable plastics out of an invasive plant called water hyacinth. And another one is called MC2, where we're using AI as early warning to detect deforestation, wildfires, and charcoal burning. What got me into this? In Africa, we have like a really different perspective of climate. We have a really young population, median age of 19 years. We have a really big problem when it comes to food insecurity, water insecurity, and so on. And all of these are usually like exacerbated by the problems behind climate change. So how and what novel ideas can we come up with that can help us address both climate change as well as the socioeconomic problems that are facing the continent?
Great. Maybe we'll stick with you, and could you expand a little bit more on the HyaPak project and tell us a little about how design specifically helps you to come up with innovative ideas, shape the project, and move it forward?
Thank you. And actually also thank you to the Young Climate Prize because of B and Anna and everyone else. So at HyaPak, we make products that look, feel, and perform like plastics, but they will decompose and biodegrade at the end of a given timeline. And these are basically meant to replace the LDPEs, that's the low density polyethylene, the low end of plastic packaging that we use in everyday, day-to-day products. And the thing is, we work together with fishermen who are affected in these communities that are affected by water hyacinth. They harvest the water weeds, they dry it, then we do like a whole chemical conversion. Currently, I think we are, in terms of pricing, one of the cheapest alternatives to single-use plastic products globally, and also in terms of the quality that we make that is much stronger than the regular plastics. And that's where the design comes in of how do we make the science the best possible in the whole industry. Yeah.
It's amazing. Pamela, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about climate words and how you use design thinking, maybe more than design itself, to form that and evolve that project too. Yeah, for us, climate words started after COP26, the UN climate negotiations. There, Valentine and I, who co-founded it, noticed that a lot of the words were taken out of context. They were being used for greenwashing and political purposes, many to benefit each person's own agenda. And I remember wanting to kind of grab them back and be like, hey, that's not what the word means. They're just pretending to be better. And at the same time, we realized that climate literacy is directly correlated to climate action. So the more people understand climate change, the more likely they're gonna take action. And that's how climate words started. We're a lexicon, a dictionary of words, each related to climate change in some way, and every single one is defined by a frontline expert. So that person that knows it best, that are at the front line of the problem, but also the solution. And yeah, design thinking, I think this whole structure of the problem, not the problem, yeah, but the project is, systems organizing and system design. Amazing. And Alfonse, you take a little bit more of an abstracted curatorial approach to your work. Maybe you could explain a little bit about some of your current projects and how they fit into the wider climate narrative too.
Yeah, definitely. As a cultural worker and exhibition maker, the role of design kind of infiltrates every moment and everything that I do. Either it is in the artifacts that I choose to put together in exhibitions, programs, and screenings, or it has to do with the ways in which I construct narratives, in which I design exhibitions, I design engagements and relationships. And my current projects include working with the Yale Center for Ecosystem and Architecture with Professors Mei-Ling Loco and Anna Dyson on a testbed exhibition come workshop workshop, or over in New Haven, and as well as an independent research project that I've continued from my time in the Young Climate Prize that looks at the kind of solidarity that can emerge between a kind of pan-tropical biogeographies. And in that way, the idea of design really comes across in thinking through what are the ways that we ferment and create relationship? How do we, in the words of scholars and curators before us, how do we live together? And thus, design becomes both an object, a subject, and a methodology. And I think that's where maybe I'm in that intermediate point between Pam and Joseph in thinking through how do we change the value in the value chain, you know, beyond just changing the supply chain. Yeah.
Amazing. It's so great to see that you're all doing such different work, but it's all interrelates with one another, and I think it's a really important part of the prize too that puts a wide-ranging group of 25 young people together who can explore ideas and share knowledge and solutions too. I want to talk a little bit about storytelling because I think that's such an important part of getting the message across about the climate crisis, and each of you use narrative building and stories in different ways. I'd love to hear from each of you how the prize, particularly in working with your mentors and with each other, helped you to build your story and how you're better able to tell it now.
So I can, we'll just go first.
Whoever wants to go first.
Okay. No, the prize has been incredibly formative in how I think I approach exhibition making and even in thinking through the definitions of solidarity. So prior to the Young Climate Prize, I was awarded the Prince Claus Fund and the Goethe Institute Fund for Cultural Response to Climate Change alongside a Malaysian partner, where we were working on capacity development with indigenous artists and designers and filmmakers in Malaysia. And that project kind of, you know, took a little break while I did grad school and Young Climate Prize. And now I'm thinking of working with my initial collaborator to restart an archives of indigenous knowledges that are not just for outsiders, but it's capacity building for the community. And that's one of the ways, you know, in which narrative building comes back to the fore, because how will we communicate and work together?
Yeah, for me, my mentor in the Young Climate Prize was a curator, Marina Pestana, and she really helped us create that design structure where we could house the words in specific topics and themes so that as a user you could kind of go on your own journey. Maybe you entered the dictionary to find a word related to architecture, but then you ended up knowing more about water or resilience or, resistance maybe. And also something that was special was the whole network itself. I think to this day it's something that I've really enjoyed, like collaborating, but also the support system behind it. That's been great.
Yeah, it's actually hard to speak after these two. For me, I had my mentor, Jan Boylen, and one thing we realized, or I learned, was that design and chemistry and making new products does not work in isolation, and the storytelling comes in by involving communities and involving people, because ultimately you want to move, that is if you're an entrepreneur in the climate space, you want to move your products to the market, you want to have them adopted by people, and the only way that they can adopt your products as opposed to the normal conventional ones that you're getting out of, which are fossil fuels, is if they understand the story of the product, the how and the why. And that's where the whole communication story comes in and the storytelling of the product. And you have to build a narrative behind it and tell them not just why fossil fuels are bad, but now because they're bad, this is what we can do about it, and this is what we have done about it, and this is how you can also help us to do it. And that's how we've driven up the adoption. For context, our country, Kenya, has banned the use of single-use plastics. We don't use plastic bags in Kenya. And the same also for Rwanda. And the thing is, now that we've banned plastics, what do we give people as an alternative, and how do we teach them about it?
Amazing. And just to wrap up, we probably only got a couple minutes left, but I'd love for you to all to explain just very briefly about why the cross-generational approach to the prize, having a mentor to help you through, and then also working with one another has helped you learn, advance, and move forward in the world?
I think for me, it is just important to know that there are forebears, ancestors, seniors, upperclassmen, people before us doing the same work, because if not, it's incredibly lonely sometimes when you are fighting against the marketing budgets of the people who ostensibly, are breaking the world apart. And thus, this kind of intergenerational approach, I think it is important to build continuity in knowledge, but also in community. And I think, to invoke the wise words of a chimpanzee in Planet of the Apes, apes together strong.
So funny. For me, growing up with the young climate justice movement with high schoolers and young college students, we didn't really have any other generations. It was kind of us figuring out how to solve, to us, what really felt like trying to solve the world. And coming into the Young Climate Prize, it was almost like a weight off my shoulders, where it was like, wow, there's actually people that are older than us that have already done similar work to this and that are on our side. We don't need to be fighting with them. We can be working with them. And yeah, it was a nice relief.
Yeah, again, it's really hard to speak after these two. But the thing about the Young Climate Prize as well, and growing up in climate, is for this ecosystem, we got to, for example, team up, and we are teaming up with Stanley and Joshua from our cohort. Both of them are from Nigeria. We are doing some really amazing work with them. And the thing is, you realize that the ecosystem in climate needs us to work together, because if we do something about water, we do something about words, we do something about design, about fashion, about plastics, about energy, like there's so many verticals that need to be integrated simultaneously if we are to make like a really just transition or to adaptation or something to the new changing world.
Amazing. It's so inspiring, and it's really great to hear three of you and see you all in person, because we've had a lot of virtual meetings and it's only been a couple of times that we've seen each other in person. Before we wrap up, I just want to say a big thank you to the three of you for being here, and I know you all have a busy week with all the Climate Week events going on. I want to say a special thank you to Beatrice Galilee and to Anna Minuhin for being such amazing partners in the Young Climate Prize. They're so inspiring and so great to work with. All of the World Around team, Board of Directors, Advisory Board, and Young Climate Prize Advisory Board, your time and your effort is very much well appreciated. And if you or anyone you are working with, your companies, your organizations, is interested in learning more about the Young Climate Prize, Anna, Beatrice, and I will be around after the session to speak and answer any questions that you have. We are a non-profit organization, so we need all the support we can get. And great, please give a big round of applause to our panelists.
One more round of applause for them. Such an incredibly talented, impressive group, and such an amazing organization and prize, I think, to highlight the power of youth voices, youth innovation, and truly across the spectrum of what design can mean and design can be. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our second half, I think, highlighting the topic on all of our minds in 2025, which is what happens when you can't say climate? How do you sell climate? How do you get people on board when climate becomes a word that oftentimes is not just politicized, but sometimes outright banned at this point? So it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Cheryl Dorsey. She's an award-winning data journalist, entrepreneur, speaker, and author, shaping stories and big ideas on the future of climate tech, sustainability, investing, technology, and the future of work.
Thank you.
Oh, she's incredibly impressive. There's more.
Thank you.
She founded the Plug in 2016, the first Black data-driven tech news publication to syndicate on the Bloomberg Terminal, acquired by Impact Alpha in 2023. As the host of the TED Tech podcast, Sherelle offers expert commentary on technologies that are transforming society and creating opportunities for underserved communities to participate in the future of work. Her column Power Up at Inc. magazine highlights and amplifies the work of women leaders who are driving innovation and making impact in the sustainability and climate tech sectors. Her book, Upper Hand, The Future of Work for the Rest of Us, published by Wiley in 2021, provides practical resources to help everyday people reframe for high-demand careers in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. She's graced many stages and many keynotes, has a master's degree in data journalism from Columbia University, a bachelor's degree in international trade marketing from FIT, local, and in 2025 was named to the Black Enterprise's 40 Under 40 list and awarded an Aspen Institute Fellowship. Cheryl, we are absolutely honored to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so awkward to sit and let someone like just talk about you, you know? But on with the show. I have the privilege of leading this esteemed panel conversation of some amazing founders. So I want to go ahead and call them out now. Craig Casper, who is joining us from Title Vision. Yes, keep the stage nice and warm. Julietta Moradai, founding and managing partner of Overlay Capital. Warm welcome for her as well. And last but certainly not least, Philippe Cousteau, founder of Seavor and Coral Reef Regeneration Platform. So this entire experience is about storytelling and connection and the bigger question of what happens when we can't say climate, what happens in a world where gross misinformation is sort of dominating the media waves, what happens when Silicon Valley sort of crowds out what are needed and necessary solutions. And so this conversation today is really aimed at what can you take away today to start really connecting, right? Really connecting with your core audience, and really excited to jump into this conversation with you all to learn about not just the success of your companies and the kind of problems that you're solving, but also how are you making that connection beyond just being part of the climate tech movement at large. So I would love to start with you, Craig, and then we'll go down the line. If you can maybe just share a tad bit about Title Vision or your respective companies, and just briefly your why. That would be great.
At Title Vision, how I describe us is a ragtag group of now hundreds of people who have been working for a decade now, embarrassingly hard, to help solve some of humanity's most pressing climate, pollution, and chemistry challenges across two critical verticals, water and agriculture. And we're building these solutions that we believe are scalable off a unique biomolecule that's perhaps the most underutilized, underexploited, yet so extremely abundant that all of us interact with it in our daily lives. Literally the second most abundant building block in all of nature, only behind cellulose, and unlocking the unique properties that it has that I believe are key in creating systemic impact in these two verticals. So.
Julietta.
I'll start off with my why. So my background has always been in the built environment. I'm a structural engineer and architect by background. So my why is very early on in my academic career, I saw that the built world is responsible for 48% of carbon globally. So it was kind of strange to me that that wasn't something that we were talking about nor doing something about. I started off my career in Walt Disney Imagineering, so designing theme parks and resorts, to then Arup, a firm that has built some of the largest high-rises and bridges, and we were not taking that into account necessarily in our design. So what I do today is I'm the managing partner at Overlay Capital. We focus on decarbonizing the built environment. The way that that looks is we're investing in early stage startups that are materials, robotics, software, that are figuring out how to design, build, operate buildings to reduce that carbon. And we're also consulting developers and builders on how to actually adopt that technology. One of the hardest things, and we'll get to that throughout the panel, is there's amazing technologies out there, but unless people know how to use them or adopt them, then they're not going to get anywhere. So we're really focused on implementation, adoption by the end users.
Always hard to follow Julietta, whom I've had the pleasure of being friends with for many years now. It's always fun to be on the stage together. So Philippe Cousteau, I am an entrepreneur, problem solver, and at my core, an ocean guy. Third generation of a family that's focused on the oceans, on restoring and protecting the ocean. And from the perspective as a storyteller, filmmaker, and documentarian, as well as an entrepreneur, I'm really interested in solutions, and in particular how we scale solutions to some of the big problems facing the ocean. And our company, Voice Regen, and Civoir are both companies that are focused on doing just that, and how applying commercial solutions to actually scale is critical to take the next step.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for grounding us in the why. And now I want us to peel back the layers and the how, and what strategies you all, and pivots as well, in order to connect even beyond the climate movement. So each of you is building solutions with real market traction. And when you're talking to people, not just investors or folks like in the policy world or what have you, or vendors that you're working with, or founders that you're working with, what do you typically lead with? What is that first conversation? Anyone can jump in on this question. Not all at once.
I'd say it really depends on the audience, but in short, I think there's a few core values that almost every human being has. And so if you can boil down how what you're doing can connect to each of our daily lives, so like in our case at Tidal Vision, clean water and agriculture production is absolutely necessary. Yet at the same time, 70% of NOx emissions come from agriculture production. And so by talking about how these tools are being implemented and making a real impact, and how that impacts all of our daily lives, that seems to connect with about anyone.
Yeah. I'll give an example that happened just yesterday. So my baby brother, who's not a baby anymore, is graduating from Cornell with a degree in chemistry. And both my parents are medicinal chemists working in pharmaceutical companies. Curing cancer is amazing, but I'm trying to get these young people to come into the world of climate. So to paint a picture for him, I was saying, you know, we talk about the built environment so much and use a lot of this jargon, but I told him, everything that you see around you, your dorm, you know, the sidewalk that you get to walk to class, the bridge you take over at your campus, everything is the built world. And with the chemistry background, you could actually impact the materials that we use, and you could drive innovation in the space to drive 50% of the carbon globally. So again, it's picturing the why for him and saying, how can you use your unique skills to get into our space, and why that's important right now and for future generations.
Amazing. Philippe?
I think one of the big mistakes we've made with climate is making polar bears the poster child of the movement and the issue. Nobody cares about polar bears. I mean, we care about polar bears. We care about polar bears.
Very much.
But not enough to change our behavior, not enough to drive the political and economic and social change that's necessary, right? People relate to people. And the environmental movement writ large, I think, fails one of the basic fundamentals of communications, which is talk about what your audience cares about, not what you care about. And we constantly talk about what we care about and aren't listening to what people care about. And to Craig's point, what we care about is opportunity. We care about taking care of our families. We care about putting a roof over our head. And we don't talk about that enough with respect to the environment. So for example, our work to rebuild coral reefs, when we talk about it, we don't talk about pretty fish and the importance of coral reefs. We talk about them as a critical coastal shield to protect coastlines, hundreds of billions of dollars of investment, hundreds of millions of lives. We talk about it as a source of opportunity to create jobs in local communities, where if those jobs go away in tourism and fishing, people turn to illegal migration and transnational crime. We talk about how you put food, protecting the environment could put food on people's tables. And when we get away from that humanity and that human connection to these issues, and we get into kind of abstract ideas and concepts, and again talk about what we care about and not what our audience cares about, that's when we fail.
Yeah, Philippe, you just blew through so many of my questions. I appreciate that. You gotta love when people do your work for you, you know? Juliet, let's actually come back, I think, to your point, Philippe, around these kind of big picture, like technical kind of conversations that sometimes we can get way too in the weeds with. And Julietta, you see, hear, watch so many pitches, right? Countless pitches from founders. And I'm curious about what is even your advice for founders, or maybe some of the best pitches that you've connected with? And like, what are the core tenets of that? And that makes you say, like, this is a company that I want to invest in and they're going to go far?
Well, I think Philippe brought it directly to that point, which is investors will care about the return on their investment. So who's your audience? They're going to care about that dollar sign. So you're not talking about the pretty fish. You're not talking about the corals. I mean, I love that, but does the investor love that? They care about resiliency, coastal resiliency. What does that mean to my insurance companies? What does that mean to the government when it comes to those dollar signs? So when you're talking to an investor, the most important thing to think about is there a gap in the market? Am I creating a solution where I'm actually addressing a real problem? And is there a market in the gap? So again, in that gap, is there a big enough market that the investor is going to think about the dollar signs? So to give an example, a lot of founders will say, I have the best solution since sliced bread. And that's amazing that you believe so much in it. But you have to showcase what is that addressable market and what's the true case study that you could walk an investor through to showcase that there's actually a market in that gap. There's actually people that are using your solution and you have real case studies. So some of the best pitches I hear are not when they just walk me through their abstract solution, they show me the actual solution working in that market and who their customers are and walk me through a real case study. So for example, one of the companies that we've invested in is called Kind Designs. They do living seawalls. So what that means basically is that they 3D print these concrete seawalls where corals grow on them. So of course it's amazing to talk about the corals and how they're actually, regenerating the coral reefs right now in South Florida. But when they're talking to investors, they're actually not mentioning that at all. They're saying, hey, right now there's not enough builders that are creating these seawalls the traditional method. It takes them months to build, months to permit. Right now Miami is underwater. We need to build faster and cheaper. And I've created a solution that's faster and cheaper. And right now we could actually go ahead and pre-permit things in a way we've never been able to do before. So it's all about who that audience is and having that empathy, which I think will be a core theme of this panel today.
Yeah, that's a powerful example. Very familiar with Kind Designs. Shout out to anybody here from Miami? It's lovely right now. I just packed up because I realized that might be my last year before Miami's completely underwater. So I do hope you enjoy it. No, just joking. So I want to expand this lens and also start to now think about that emotional connection without overwhelming people. And Craig, you have this balance with the science as well as the green chemistry. But with that, the story of selling your products to farmers or municipalities, that has to be an entirely different kind of conversation. So how do you actually enter that conversation that connects without overwhelming people, and particularly your vendors?
Great question. I think comes back to some of the topics we've already touched on about not only not making things abstract, but making them really, really personal. And in our case, our customers are the hero with the potential to change the world, and we're just giving them the next generation of tools to do that. So the world needs to eat. Farmers need to farm. Same with water treatment companies. They don't choose to use chemistries that are polluting for the environment to solve pollution challenges. In fact, most of the professionals get into the field because treating polluted water is an extremely tangible benefit. But the tools they've had have been so limited. And so I think flipping that script, making it tangible, and making it where they're the hero with the opportunity to drive that systemic impact, and you're just providing them the tools to succeed in that is key.
Philippe, I want to go back to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned. Again, that human connection, jobs, opportunity, the things that we all care about. We care about safety, we care about our families. And there's also the side of the skepticism in climate, right? And maybe a lot of that misinformation. And so when you are having conversations, what are some of the strategies that you're using to reframe potential misinformation, potential skepticism as you're having conversations?
I've been at this a long time and my whole life, and oftentimes what I find is that you're not going to change people's perspective in a conversation. And so I actually, I'm an impatient guy and outcomes driven and really interested in how do we solve problems. And so, what intrigued me about this, the title of this, is that, what we find in the work we do in the ocean, particularly around, say, coral reefs or the work in the Southern Ocean that my wife is very engaged in, around Antarctica and how do we protect that and provide commercial solutions to solve that problem. I'm more interested in what are the solutions and how can we come together and agree on those solutions. And again, how do we lean into, oftentimes we don't talk about climate change when we talk about coral reefs, frankly, because we're not here to debate the causes of the problems. We're here to say, what is an actual tangible solution that can improve people's lives to solve that problem? And that can be a commercially viable solution that makes money, is scalable, and helps us all bridge the gap. I don't want to argue about, I've decided a long time, I don't want to argue about politics, I don't want to argue about the polarization. And again, I'm just not going to convince somebody that climate change is a real issue. But maybe what I can do is present an opportunity that can put food on the table, that can provide economic growth, that can create stability for communities. I think that's something that we can all get behind, and that regardless of political affiliation is a universal truth, right? And so honestly, I these days increasingly, I don't even go down that road. I really focus on, okay, what can we agree on?
Yeah.
And what solutions can we implement together?
Yeah. Juliette, I want to turn to you now. I'd love your thoughts on how the climate story, the storytelling in climate, is going to evolve and shift, particularly when it comes to capital flows. And we see more mainstream investors start to either take notice or see the at least business opportunity and how that framing may evolve. Right now, if they're not getting that, hey, this is a very significant challenge that we should be working on, or maybe that conversation is, here's the return opportunity. How do you see that evolving?
We're already seeing that evolve, where you see a lot of generalist investors, whether it's an early stage venture and private equity, now investing into what they're not necessarily calling climate, but is climate, to your point, because it's the returns are driving those conversations. So again, if I bring it back to the built world, one of my main clients is the Department of Energy. So the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We started a program last year where for the last 11 years, Wells Fargo, a major bank, has been investing and supporting an accelerator program for climate technologies, built environment solutions, and the acceleration of them. How do you get these early stage startups to basically grow much faster and get their customers in a quicker way? Now, last year they realized, well, 99% of these startups are not getting traction. They're not getting enough investors, to your point, or at pilot stage, they kind of stall there. There's this death valley. So we created the first of a kind program through the IN2 program, if you want to look it up, where it's all based on adoption through the end user, the customers. So now we're seeing the largest real estate providers, CBRE, Galvanize, Schneider Electric, entering this program and focusing on how do I actually bring these technologies to drive down cost and time, and the secondary effect is carbon. So a lot of it, to our point before, is they're driven by dollar signs first. Some of the worst things I see is when founders in the climate space lead with, well, it's okay if you pay a green premium. You're saving the planet, which is, I agree with personally on a values basis, but that's not how you're going to move the needle with investors. You have to know who you're talking to in the room. So whether it's an investor or that customer, in my case, I work with a lot of developers, so folks in the real estate industry, they want to know that their solution is going to drive down scope, schedule, budget at the end of the day. And so I always kind of think of a Trojan horse type of effect. Lead with, this solution is actually going to make your life so much easier. You're going to be on schedule. It's going to be cheaper, but you know it's also driving sustainability outcomes. And so what I've been seeing, to answer your question, is I'm seeing a lot more investors pay attention, both on the customer side. It's no longer it's nice to have this green solution. It's, I have to do something to innovate because right now I can't even make margins when I'm building. So I need to be innovating. And investors following that path because they're seeing a growth of the demand side. So I think all in all, the final message is really lead with your ROI, lead with your case studies, showcase that your solution is going to be better than the other solution out there.
I love that. Did you want to add to that, Craig?
Yeah, I just completely agree with what you said about the economics and leading with that. And you touched on the convenience of adoption. And in my experience, that sounds so simple, but is so hard to actually do. That when these solutions exist and they are better economically, or they have better performance, or both, so they fundamentally can be scalable because everyone's interests are aligned, actually making the adoption process convenient is so crucial, because your challenge is not your technology works or not, it's cheaper or not, it's faster or not at a certain point. It's, can you change the status quo rapidly enough or not? And that's where really comes down to it. So.
And that's one side of the story that is also driven by a sense of urgency, which is really interesting. And I think about thus far, especially when I'm in rooms with other climate reporters, one of the things that we haven't done well on the journalism end is create a sense of urgency without doom, right? And it goes back to your point, Philippe, about like, we're talking about polar bears way too often, right? Versus how does this affect your energy costs, right? At grandmother's kitchen table, right? And what she's able to afford each month, because now costs have risen and her light bill is outrageous, right? And so moving from the sense of doom, right, or hopelessness, into this idea of we have to be urgent, but there's a lot of hope. What are you all seeing in this space, whether in your respective companies or even just externally as you're having conversations with colleagues, about the kinds of messages that are actually inspiring hope?
I think you alluded to it earlier or mentioned it. There's a big trust gap in the public right now. We were at Ashley was speaking at an event this morning. We were talking about this, and part of that is driven by distrust that there are solutions, or that the private sector, or certainly the public sector or government, can actually solve problems. And part of that, frankly, is our own doing. Certainly in the environmental space, we spend a lot of time talking, a lot of time researching, a lot of time researching some more, and then a little bit more time writing a paper about it, and then some more time filing that paper on a bookshelf that no one's ever going to read. And we don't spend enough time in the field actually implementing solutions and showing that solutions exist at scale that affect people's lives and make their lives better. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. The fundamentals. Heiko will laugh because I don't have a lot of sports knowledge, but I know when I was in basketball, it's like dribbling, passing, and shooting. Like, the fundamentals that you need to be focused on here are the same when you talk about a business or when you talk about the impact of what you're doing. It's about people's lives and opportunity and jobs, and creating that. Polar bears comes way later, but we put polar bears first, and we forget about this stuff that matters to people at our peril.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring this back to the audience. I think we just have a few minutes. Just a quick show of hands, just so that we know also who's in the room. Can you raise your hand if you're a filmmaker or a documentarian? Beautiful. Photographers? It's doing beautiful. Who are the rest of you people? Came for the coffee. Communicators? Came for the coffee? Me
Coffee
too.
lover? Excellent.
Me too, absolutely. So as we're talking about strategies, particularly in the business sense and the capital flow sense, I want us to think about the ways in which now the folks in this room who raised their hand can take insights from this stage and apply this knowledge like tomorrow. So I actually want to maybe start with you, Julieta. If a filmmaker or an advocate actually wanted to influence an investor, what kind of framing should they be prioritizing so that the story, it resonates within the boardroom and then kind of beyond?
So it's one word, which is empathy. And bear with me for a second. So there is this master negotiator called Chris Voss. And one of his top tips is basically, before you give your idea or what you're really trying to get out of the negotiation, your point of view, first explain to the person what their point of view is, what you think their point of view is. So if you're talking to an investor for your film, or you're trying to capture the hearts and minds of these investors for your film, put yourself in their shoes at the end of the day. They want to see a return on that investment. But of course, you want to have people champion you who also believe in what you're building. So first think of, from their point of view, what are they trying to get out of this outcome? it is a return on investment while also doing good. And so shape your story, as we were saying before, in a way we were saying, this is going to get the audience that this film is going to drive the audience to come watch it, and here's why. But also lead through, we were talking about alarmism before. People are done with that in the climate world. You want to lead with joy and with inspiration. So what we're really seeing right now is a lot of case studies. I think a lot of people have been focusing on the research and what's been going on behind the scenes. Go out there and look at what's actually been adopted. Case studies are actually gaining scale. And that's where investors are going to start looking, when there's momentum happening. And there's so many amazing case studies out there. It's about capturing those.
Thank you. Did everyone get that? Is everyone taking notes? Perfect. So I want to turn to you, Craig. You have raised significant capital for Tidal Vision. And I can imagine when you are in that pitch meeting, the first sentence you say is not necessarily climate. So I would love to know, what is that first sentence that you use with investors to make that connection, and then how can filmmakers borrow that approach?
Yeah, it's funny because investors are such a different audience. They think so different. And when I founded this company 10 years ago, I knew nothing about venture capital. And through a lot of lessons learned the hard way, we've been fortunate to raise a few $100 million, and we're really growing rapidly and deploying that capital productively. And what I'd say is different about the investor audience is you need to have a really crisp story. And for us, that's about scalability. So what really is scalable? And fundamentally, I believe a solution's not scalable unless it compellingly outcompetes on economics, performance, and then that third pillar we touched on, made extremely convenient or easy to adopt with both existing practices and mindsets in these industries. And I think it's really emphasizing, even if you're early stage, how you're going to put your technology out in the world to get objective feedback and build that feedback loop is absolutely crucial, because it's so easy or comfortable to stay in a bubble and to receive praise from people who see the world through a similar lens to you. And I like to try to model our organization at every single level off the basic principles of evolution, right? Where we started as single cell organisms, one gene mutation at a time, and then all of a sudden there's an eyeball, right? And millions of iterations later, but one at a time. And that objective feedback that can only come from science or from is a non-biased audience really willing to give you money for your solution because it makes their life compellingly better, because there's a high hurdle there to overcome the status quo. So
amazing. I love the eyeball metaphor. And speaking of metaphors, Philippe, in your experience, what kind of images, what kind of metaphors or lived experiences do you feel stick with people long after they're leaving a conversation, especially around climate?
Well, I believe that story is the language of learning. We've only had televisions and radios and all that mischief for a very, very short period of our evolution, books, etc. Prior to that, it was story. And there's a reason that storytelling was one of the most revered and in many cases dangerous professions in communities, because if you couldn't memorize the story right, you were sometimes literally executed. Because maintaining those stories was such a critical part of knowledge and culture through thousands of years. And so, so our brains are programmed to look for specific points in a story, character, conflict, setting, like all those basics, our brains, and the more you have of that, the more your brain remembers, the stickier that issue and that topic is. So I do always like to try and incorporate a personal story or anecdote experience as to why this matters to me, to make a connection with people on a human level. I think that's important than just jumping straight into a spreadsheet or numbers. Connect with people on a human level, build that empathy, and then be tenacious, because it's hard. Yeah. You got to keep going at it over and over and over and over. You can have the best idea in the world, but VCs may not get it. So you just have to keep asking until you find somebody that does.
I love that, the idea of being tenacious, and we're going to be telling stories over and over and over again, right? It's such a crowded space, right, in media today, and so the idea that we just have to keep building those stories, keep sending the same messaging as well to really crack open that connection. Sometimes it's not just that one time, right? Sometimes it just has to be reiterated in order for it to make sense and then get really deeply rooted, right? So as we close, I'd love to ask you all, maybe we can go down the line starting with you, Craig. If we really want to build this movement of climate solutions that feel human first, and I'm sure everyone we've exhausted the human connection part, right? That's human first. What's going to be one of the single most important principles for us as we're telling these stories?
I think it was just summarized well, leading with your story and why you're so intrinsically motivated to solve this issue, and then get into the technology, the go-to-markets, the whatever it might be that truly checks all the financial boxes. At the end of the day, my philosophy is money's just an exchange of value, and you'll be more successful the degree to which you can positively impact lives times how many lives you can positively impact. So just connect with your story, your background, as we did backstage before this, what motivated you to create this solution? Because at the end of the day, it takes tenacity, and people are only going to believe that you're going to have that tenacity if they understand what really motivates you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julietta.
I think the first question you asked us on this panel was, what's your why? Before you go pitch to an investor, to someone that's going to be your customer, know their why. And that's what empathy is. Truly understand who your audience is and who you're telling this story to. Because if you're trying to convince a police officer or a kindergarten teacher that they should care about this thing, why do they care? And I think that changes the dialogue so much, because we all know why we're doing what we're doing. And you've spent so much time on creating your solution, but it's all about voicing it in the right way to your audience.
And Philippe, I'll let you take us home.
Drop the mic. That was awesome.
Good.
Boom.
Amazing. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for being here as well. Craig, Julietta, Philippe, again, thank you.
Thank you.
And big shout out to John for putting us together.
Thank you all as well for such a fantastic panel. We will be clearing out the theater. We invite you all to go to the lobby, mingle, connect with the speakers, have some more conversations, and we will be back here in just 15 minutes at 5 p.m. for our closing panel, Films from the Frontlines. We have an amazing lineup of filmmakers and speakers from incredible organizations. So see you in 15, and see you soon.